All right, welcome back to module number 3. It's great to have you guys here. If you're here after 3 modules, then this means that you're truly hungry and really want growth. So kudos to you. That's awesome. And buckle up because we're about to hit the topic of identity, which is so amazing. So we're just going to dive right into this. So we're going to talk about your identity and identifying the problems. So Jake, I want you to go ahead and step into identity. Why is it so important for us to know our identity as veterans and first responders and family members?
I think the biggest impact knowing our true identity has is that we know that we can fight at all. If I don't know who I am called to be in Christ, then I'm never going to feel adequate enough to walk in victory. And that's where in our false identity, or not knowing our identity at all, that's where we wind up in stuck points, believing the lies, bleeding out from wounds spiritually and naturally. And that's where we see our natural world break down around us. We have no communication. We can't communicate how we feel. We can't communicate how others make us feel, and we just deteriorate. And so that's why it's important to know our identity and help us identify those stuck points.
Wow, that's amazing. So I heard it said like this: identity known equals your destiny shown. Mm-hmm. So like, do you truly think that all we're lacking, or the major part of what we're lacking to step into our destiny, to unlock the very potential that's within us, is walking in our true identity? So that's what you're saying, right?
Absolutely.
Come on.
Because then I don't just let everything that's unfolding continue to unfold. In a combat environment, a combat situation, you don't just let them keep shooting at you. You know your identity as a combatant to shoot back.
Come on.
And we let all of the lies that happen from our trauma, maybe how we've been a negative impact on our family, our wives, our kids, our parents, however that looks, and then we take ourselves out of the situation and never fight back. And we never use the word, the sword of the Spirit, like we're supposed to. We forget that we have a weapon system even outside of the military.
Come on. So that relates it real well for military, and I think a lot of first responders kind of get that mindset also. How would you relate that mindset and that understanding of combativeness to maybe a spouse of a veteran or a first responder that maybe they don't fully understand the realm of fighting for our identity, fighting in our identity for something else? Can you break that down?
Yeah, so my testimony very much is one of my wife fighting for me from her true identity before I ever knew who I was. And scripturally, it comes from 1 Corinthians 7, that a believing spouse will sanctify their husband through their faith. And so that's the reality of, like, no matter where you come from, you could be a veterinarian. And because of you knowing your true identity, you're equally as important and able to impact your family just because you know your identity. And so, for a firefighter, it's showing up to a fire without any water.
Wow.
For a police officer, it's trying to apprehend somebody without any handcuffs. For a spouse of a veteran, it's trying to show up to your family but thinking that you don't even get a say in anything because you're so beaten down.
Wow.
It's standing on the reality of you knowing who you are and that you have a job to do as a son or a daughter of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords.
Wow. And it is so powerful for the spouses of veterans and first responders to understand that you have a role to play in fighting for your loved one. You as a parent have a role for fighting for your loved one. You, as the veteran or first responder, have the ability and the authority to fight on behalf of your family to bring them through this and help them recover from this stuff. So there's so much that's wrapped up into how we fight. And But the key component that we're talking about here is identity. So let's get into this. So let's identify some of the problems. Like, let's help you identify the main areas where we are, what we call stuck points, right? So can you break down some of those stuck points in our identity?
Some of the really basic stuck points are just the feeling of inadequacy. The inability that we have to contribute to anything because of our wounds. Where we see ourselves wounded, we're not able to impact somebody in a positive nature. And we feel inadequate of even like for veterans. If I see another veteran dealing with PTSD and I have PTSD, then I feel like I don't have any answers for them. And so we feel completely inadequate. And that's a lie. That's a lie that where I'm wounded, I can't help other people. If I'm walking around with a Band-Aid and you need a Band-Aid, I know where to get Band-Aids, and we have to see that as reality.
Yeah, we see this a lot. Like, oh, you don't know. You can't help me because you don't know what I've been through. Or you can't help me because, you were never in combat. And then you say you are, oh, well, I was in combat. And they're like, oh, well, you weren't in where I was. And you weren't in the unit I was in. Well, Jesus wasn't either. Does that mean that he can't heal us? Right? Is this not a mindset that we come up against quite often?
True. 100%. So in that we have this thing that comes out of inadequacy that we're all really familiar with, it's pride.
Yeah.
Because pride comes out of our insecurities. And so that's another stuck point. We feel this pride and arrogance of there's no way you know how bad off I am. And then we get stuck there. There's no way anybody can help me.
Yeah, it's like we put ourselves in a position, like we're just digging a hole and we're throwing ourselves in it and saying like, nobody can help me out of here. I'm all on my own. But the reality is we're just not really reaching for the rope because it's not in the package we want it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So, good.
Good.
So I wanted to talk about like the false identities that kind of trip us up. Like, I know that one I struggled with is, well, let me back up a little bit and just say, so from when we enlisted in the military or commissioned in the military, or if you're a first responder, like when we step into this, they break you down from the beginning and they build you up into an identity that they want you to be in, right?
Yeah.
And like, then they put us on this path of like, you are a warrior and this is your task, or you're a paramedic and this is your task, or you're an EMT, and it becomes almost like a badge of honor that we wear, right? However, it is given to us for a reason and for a purpose. Like, you were a Marine. They tell you that you were the baddest thing that ever walked the face of the earth because they hope that you believe it so you can fight as if you were the baddest thing that ever walked the face of the earth.
They break you down until you believe it.
There you go. Yeah. Exactly, right? So this is exactly what we're talking about, but instead you've allowed the world to break you down, and you've allowed the world to tell you who you are and what you're capable of, instead of the one that created you. So this is kind of what I want to peel back some of these false identities. So like for me, even though I was in the military, I did a bunch of cool stuff, got to do some fun stuff. I always felt like I wasn't enough. Like I wasn't enough of a provider. I wasn't enough because as a spiritual leader, I wasn't enough. And these are lies that I began to believe about myself. I wasn't good enough, capable enough, worthy enough. These were things that kept me in a stuck place. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I went from an identity of an inadequate son to a moderately accomplished Marine, and then when I had a bad surgery and all of that was taken away from me and the identities that I've been built up into were gone, I was lost. So then I threw myself into business, and then I became, I'm Jake and this is the business that I own. And this is something that is cultivated in our society. That's why you never walk up to people that you have never met and say, hi, I'm Jake, and here's who I am. And you don't say, how are you being? You say, what do you do? What are you doing? What is it that you do in this world? And so our identity comes exactly from what we're putting ourselves into. And as soon as it's gone, where's our identity going to be?
Come on. So we're human beings, not human doings,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Yeah, come on. So I like to talk about defeating lies. So like we identified lies, we identified, the false identities. Let's just call it what it is. It's a lie. It's a lie that we believe that the world labels us and puts on us. How do we defeat a lie? So Jake, what's the opposite of a lie?
The truth.
The truth. All right, cool. So if I take a lie and I write down the list of lies that I'm believing, and I write the antonyms for those, or the opposite of those, on the other side of the piece of paper, then literally that should be the truth, right?
Right.
Wow. It's kind of hard for us to believe that sometimes, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's very simple, but we don't always come out that easy.
Yeah, there's a difference between simple and easy,
Yeah.
for sure. Absolutely. Well, that's good. So anything else that you want to talk about as far as lies are concerned?
I think that's what you were saying of getting it on paper. If we can help everybody else with their problems because they're getting it out to us and we're hearing it and we're thinking about it, and then we're able to respond to them. A lot of times we believe the lies because we never get it out on paper. We never get it out of us in conversation to actually see how ridiculous it is for me to be believing this lie. If I had gotten out and wrote down, "You're not a son," I would have seen, wow, that is really dumb for me to believe that I'm not a son. I'm a male and I have a dad. I'm a son. And so that's one of the biggest things of getting out of a stuck point or looking at wounds and healing them and changing mindsets is normalizing the conversation on it. And not just normalizing, I'm going to talk about it, but I'm going to put right next to it the truth. And then I know now, every time I think this thought, "You're not a son," I can look right next to it and go, "No, I am a son. I've thought about it." And so that's a big process. That it is real simple, but it's not always easy for us to talk about it. We have to normalize that and build it up repetitiously so that's our response.
Come on. And this isn't a point of like you combating lies so that way you feel better about yourself. And that's a byproduct of this. This happens naturally, right? But the whole purpose of us doing this is to overcome the things that are holding us back, overcome the things that are keeping us from walking in the full potential that God's created us for, right? So, like in the military, I didn't want anything keeping me back from being my best. I wanted to be my best. As first responders, like you don't want anything to hold you back from being the best that you can be at what you do. As spouses and family members of veterans and first responders, there's nothing that you want holding you back from being the fullness of the potential that God's given you. So let's help you overcome those things and break through them. So when we don't defeat the lies, or when we believe these lies, we tend to put on this like mentality or this mindset of a victim. Can you like break that down and like how does being, I think everybody knows what a victim is, but how do you see a victim mindset affecting people in their growth and their transformation?
Substantially. It's what, we talked about, we go back to our lowest form of training. And when we have a victim mindset, that's always what we're going to default to. No matter if I see the truth right in front of me, if I don't change my mindset from a victim to a victor, then it's not going to make any sense. I'm not going to be able to walk into it. And then however good I feel for a while is going to be short-lived, and I'm going to revert back to that victim mentality and pick up all of the lies and all of the wounds, and it's just going to be deteriorated over time. So there's no longevity. When we see guys come in and spouses come in and they get a little bit of healing and they're good for a little while and they go back into it, 9 times out of 10, it's because they're walking in a victim mindset. They see the good, they know the truth. And that's why I walked in a long time. I was a victim, which kept me outside of who I was in Jesus.
Come on.
And so that's one of those things that you also have to normalize and be open about, like, okay, I'm just playing the part of a victim. Even though I know the truth and I see it right in front of me, I can't receive it because my first thing I revert back to is losing.
Yeah. Wow. And that's so debilitating
Yeah.
when we see ourselves as a victim. It literally keeps us from walking forward in any area of our life. It's like if we see ourselves as a victim, we'll never be victorious.
Yeah.
Right? There's a scripture in Proverbs that says, "As a man thinks, so he is." Right?
Mm-hmm.
If we see ourselves and think of ourselves as victorious, then we'll walk out a victorious lifestyle. But if all we can see ourselves as a victim and all we can do is believe the lie, then we're going to be stuck in that place.
Yeah, totally.
You know, one of my favorite verses in Psalms is Psalms 24, verse 4, where it talks about, who can ascend the mountain of the Lord but the one with clean hands and a pure heart, who has not sworn deceitfully, meaning lie, or who has not believed falsely. So one of the things that keep us from ascending the mountain of the Lord is what we believe and what we see, how we see ourselves and what we believe about ourselves. So, Jake, do you want to put a bow on that in any way, shape, or form, or wrap this up before we kind of give them something to do as we, between now and the next module?
I think the biggest step is a practical step in this place of identifying stuck points, the lies and the wounds. Write them down. Get them on paper. This is where I'm wounded. This is the lie that I'm not going to be able to heal from this. This is where I'm stuck and I don't know where to go from here. And that's what you come to us with, right? That's what you come to the Freedom Fighter Foundation with. I've gone through the modules. Here's some of the information that I have from it. I think that's the biggest thing on this. It's very practical.
Absolutely. So self-analysis, you want to walk them through that? And this will be kind of their homework, if you will, before the next module. So
yeah, I think that's that list that you make, self-analyzing yourself, and the answer to the question, where are you? And because if we know where we are, it's not a negative thing. It's a great place to start. If I don't know where I am, there's no way to figure out where I'm going. If I know where I am, I can figure out where I need to go and what the next step is. So before we get into the next module, which is living a transformed life, you need to know where you are.
come on. See you at the next module.